Yo, what's up, folks? We're back with another debate. For once, it's not anime. I know you guys fuck with anime, but I know there's some combat sports fans out there. So you can tell with the title: Muhammad Ali Prime versus Prime Mike Tyson. I'm Mike Tyson. John is Ali, and this is a very ambiguous topic because obviously they're in different eras and shit like that. But we're gonna try our best to debate this. Let us know who you think wins, and let us know of any topics you might have. But we got Wildcat and Thomas as judges. So here we go. John, you can go first if you want.
Appreciate you having given me the floor, Jimmy.
Yeah.
This should be a great debate.
Yeah,
Should be a fun one.
this is gonna be a fun one.
Glad we decided to get this through, and let's do it. All right. So, as boxing fans, as hardcore boxing fans, casual boxing fans, always talked about. It's one of the fantasy matchups that boxing fans debated for ages. It's Mike Tyson in his prime versus Muhammad Ali in his prime. Both were larger-than-life figures during their respective eras. Mike Tyson may have been smaller than most of his competition, but his power and speed made him one of the most feared fighters of all time. Muhammad Ali, the guy that I picked, was the center of attention in every room he was in, displaying unequaled confidence and impeccable speed that made him impossible to hurt in the ring. One was a vicious brawler, one that being Mike Tyson. The other was a peerless tactician, which was Muhammad Ali. And this fight would be who would be the last man standing. Now, before I get into that, if I can, I want to get into Muhammad Ali's records and stats, if that's okay. According to ESPN, Muhammad Ali had a career record of 56 wins, 5 losses, and 37 knockouts before his retirement from boxing in 1981 at the age of 39. 2,363 days, Muhammad Ali reigned as the heavyweight champion of the world for boxing. 200 rounds boxed professionally before he was eventually defeated by Joe Frazier in the fight of the century in 1971. 19 second .19. Ali was one of the most fastest fighters in sports. In 1969, Sports Illustrated measured him that it took him just 19 seconds to punch through a balsa board, 16 and a half inches away. His fist reached the board in just 0.4 seconds. And 94 seconds it took Ali to knock out Jim Robinson in February 1961 in only his 4th professional fight. It was his quickest, even though it was his 4th, and that was his professional fight. The style, Muhammad Ali was fast. The reason why I think Muhammad Ali would beat Mike Tyson was because of his speed in the ring. Sure, he didn't have the power that Mike Tyson had with his hands, but overall as a fighter, he was fast and he had great defense in the ring. He was hold on, my phone just turned off for a second. Let's see. There it is. Like I said before, Muhammad Ali was fast. He liked to fight on the outside, flicking his jab at you, keeping you at his range. Mike Tyson, due to his shorter height for his division, was a master of evading and countering the jab. Ali fought men such as former heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson, who was similar to Tyson at that time. Patterson was trained in the peekaboo style by Tyson's mentor and trainer Cus D'Amato, and Ali dispatched Floyd Patterson pretty easily both times. Although it must be added that Patterson is no Tyson and was in his prime and was past his prime on both occasions, age 30 in the first bout and 37 in the second bout, which incidentally would be his last fight. Tyson struggled against boxers like Ali, who would stick and move, and his head movement would slow as the fight wore on. Ali's reach advantage of 7 inches would give Tyson the kind of problems he faced in the James Till and Buster Douglas fight, not to mention against Holyfield and Lewis later on in his career. Guys who utilize the jab can move and also tie you up as Ali would to Tyson. When it comes to styles, Ali gets the nod here. Where Tyson does have the advantage is his great hooking ability. Ali at times lowered his punching hand, such as when throwing the uppercut. It is a distinct possibility this is something Tyson would have capitalized on, perhaps even better than Muhammad Ali's rival Joe Frazier did. That's why I think Muhammad Ali would win this fight, is because he had speed and his defense in the ring was one of the best fans have ever seen. And Mike Tyson, yes, he had the power, but would he be able to last that long in a boxing ring with Muhammad Ali? Because back then, fights were like, 15 rounds, longer than boxing fights are today. So I think Tyson in that area would struggle as much. So Jimmy, if you want to go ahead, you can go ahead and counter.
All right. So I got quite.
I got more. That wasn't all of it. Just to make sure I got more.
All right. So I guess I'll start out by first, before I begin arguing against your points to counter those. So the stipulation that Tyson did bad against tall, lengthy fighters is somewhat invalid due to the fact that he's knocked out several fighters in the first round that are relative to the size of Ali. Now, whether you would say they're not Ali, they're still lengthy and have a lot of length on them, so it still kind of applies to some extent. So David Taco was 6'6", he knocked him out in the first round. Jesse Ferguson, 6'2", he knocked him out in the first round. Mitch Green, can't see his height. Reggie Gross, 6'4", so the list goes on and on. He has knocked out people that are lengthy and tall, and people are going to say, well, that's not Muhammad Ali, but the stipulation that Tyson can't do well against a long, tall fighter in his prime, not when he's later on in his career, in his prime, is somewhat invalid. Now, to start my argument, Mike Tyson, all right, had an impressive record of 58 wins, 6 losses, with 44 wins coming by the way in knockout. Now, Mike Tyson reached a world-class level quicker than Ali did. He became a world champion only 2 years into his professional career. He had an amazing 15 fights in his first year as a professional. He knocked 15 people out in the first round as a professional. Also fought 15 times when he had Custom Auto by his side. I would argue that's when he was in his prime, to be quite honest. Winning 26.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Custom Auto.
Yeah. So winning 26 of his first 28 fights by KO. So I would say his prime, just to give some leeway, was 1985, which is when Custom Auto died, all the way up to 1988 when he defeated Spinks. And the reason I stopped by 1988 because there's a lot of numerous legitimate news networks and close people of Tyson that say he started to go in a downward spiral as far as his dedication and his mindset and his mental health, to be quite honest. While Ali's prime was much longer, and I'm going to explain why later, but Ali did not, like I said, Ali didn't get to a world-class level until 4 years later. He was 22 when he defeated Sonny Liston, I believe, and his prime was much longer, and there were losses in his prime. It was 1960. I would argue not from 1964 to 1976. That was his prime. Again, I'll explain the vast difference in the length of their primes in a bit. But to move on, the argument that Tyson fought a lot of relatively unskilled fighters, again, is invalid due to the fact that Tyson was already fighting world-class champions 2 years in as a pro. He won his belt against Trevor Berbick at just 20 years, making him the youngest heavyweight champion ever at the time, which Ali couldn't beat either because he didn't become a world champion until 22.
Oh, Jimmy, you're lagging a little bit. I don't mean to interrupt, but you're lagging a little bit.
Am I still lagging?
Yeah, you are
lagging a bit.
You're kind of lagging right now.
Goddamn. Give me a second.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you were starting to lag a little bit, so I wasn't really to hear your points as much.
All right. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you better now.
All right. So I'll just repeat what I said last. The argument that Tyson fought a lot of relatively unskilled fighters in his career is invalid due to the fact that he was already at a world-class level only 2 years in, and again, he's literally the youngest, or at least at the time, the youngest heavyweight champion of all time. So he was at a world-class level pretty early in, actually earlier than Ali. So there's that. Now, I will now expose the flaws in the argument that Tyson was never able to beat the all-time greats such as Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield because he wasn't good enough. So I'm gonna destroy that, that assumption that people like to make that, oh, he just wasn't good enough to defeat those because he just wasn't great all time. That is a fallacy because it is clear that Mike Tyson had somewhat of a rough upbringing as a child and resulted in him having borderline mental issues. With it being quoted by many, such that Tyson didn't train for Buster Douglas fight, this illuminates the fact that Tyson, only knowing hardship for a majority of his young life, resulted in him taking his success for granted and arguably never reaching his true prime. Like I said, his prime, in my opinion, was from ages 18 to 21. At 21, physically, and the human anatomy doesn't reach their prime until around 25, up until around 33. That's like the male human anatomical prime. So he really never reached his prime, in my opinion. I'm gonna further explain why. So, where was I? His rise to fame quickly took a turn for the worse, with his own self-dismantling, with the many significant mental demons he was dealing with. I mean, we don't even have to hear the anecdotes from the numerous people he was close with. You can literally see him on TV being extremely aggressive and extremely violent towards everyone he came in contact with, which really illuminated his downward spiral as far as mental health was concerned. So the reason he lost to Buster Douglas, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of many people that know him very closely, and his own opinion, by the way, I think that's a very valid opinion himself, was because after the Michael Spinks fight, he started to take a turn for the worse in his personal life, started to party a lot. You know, he started to do things he wasn't supposed to, which even resulted in him going to prison due to a rape allegation. And he even missed 4 years of his prime years because of that. Compared to Ali, who chose, now, all due respect to Ali, he did what he thought was right. He chose to miss 4 years by not, volunteering in the service because he was drafted for military service. Again, that was his choice. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong or right. That's not the point of this, but I'm saying that was his choice. Tyson.
No, the point is who could win in a fight. Exactly.
Yeah.
The
point is Tyson was losing his shit. He was losing his fucking mind. So Mike Tyson had demons. He didn't work as hard as he should. Well, Ali, he was very famous for his hard work and dedication. He always talked about it. It was obvious that he was in a very good mental state throughout his prime years, which is the reason why he's more accomplished than Mike Tyson. But again, that's not the debate here. The debate is who would win in a fight, Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali in their primes. So I don't want to get that in the way. So upon his return to the ring after not fighting for 4 whole years, Tyson, by the way, it seems he was already far removed from his best years. And honestly, I think Cus D'Amato was the one that kept him in check for many years. I think that after the years of his death, it was just kind of a ticking time bomb, so to speak. His mental health was a ticking time bomb, and you could see on full display when he went to prison. So, in his prime, the point is, in his prime, he knocked out 16 fucking people in the first round, fought 15 times in 1 fucking year, which is unheard of now, and became a champion by age 20. That was in his prime when his mind was in the right place. And that's the version of Tyson that Ali would have to face. I'd even argue that there's even a better version that could have existed if Tyson had Cus D'Amato or a trainer that kept his shit, that helped him keep his shit together. I would say Prime Tyson is a Tyson we've never seen before, and it's probably even a better Tyson that we have on tape now. So, moving on. Where was I? All right, so boxing gurus like Teddy Atlas, right? So it's not just me saying this. Boxing gurus like Teddy Atlas have said that Tyson could have been the greatest ever if his head was in the right place. This illuminates the reality that Mike Tyson was his own worst enemy and that he in his prime was seemingly unbeatable. When he was at his best, he was unbeatable. So the stipulation that, he sucked, that's why he never beat Holyfield or Lennox Lewis, is somewhat invalid due to the fact he wasn't at his best. Holyfield is a monster. Physically, mentally, he was in it. Lennox Lewis, I can't even say good things about him. He was the most dedicated they come. While Mike Tyson was fucking his life up, doing drugs, most likely, fucking girls, and even went to prison, like I said. So he wasn't at his best, in my opinion, when he fought those guys. And honestly, I would argue if he was, he'd be the best of all time. He might even be undefeated. Now, that's an assumption, but I'm saying there's enough to imply that would be the case. So this illuminates the reality that Mike Tyson, in his prime, will most likely be Muhammad Ali. But now, I'm going to get into the interesting part of this debate where I discuss the specific differing styles and techniques of Ali and Tyson. So I want to first start by saying that there is most definitely a trend within combat sports, which is that as time goes on, the present fighters on average are better than the fighters of the past. We hear fighters say this all the time, such as GSP said the fighters of today are normally better than the fighters of yesterday. So it's from that, you can even more heavily imply that Mike Tyson is a better fighter than Muhammad Ali because he is more complete, because he was in an era that was later in the future when boxing has evolved technique-wise and style-wise. And arguably, he probably learned from Ali and from his mistakes. As far as technique, obviously, his life is a fucking mess, but as far as technique. So, let's get into the specifics of the technique now. Muhammad Ali had a long-range headhunting kind of style where he relied on his footwork speed and reach to keep his opponents at bay and overwhelm them with various high-number combinations, with his long-range jab being the key factor in his style. The flaw in his style, however, is that he's sometimes too heavily dependent on his athleticism, and I'd easily argue that Tyson is more athletic than Muhammad Ali. I think we can agree with that. That has nothing to do with speed, just pure athleticism. I think I can make the argument. I think most people will agree. And was famous for not even protecting his body. There's literally footage of him voluntarily taking body shots from opponents. Now, if that was Mike Tyson, he's going to end up with a punctured liver or a broken rib. I'll tell you that right now. So, yeah.
The rope-a-dope?
Yeah, and the rope-a-dope. The rope-a-dope wouldn't work. Yeah, definitely wouldn't work against Tyson. So, furthermore, he was prone. Now, this is a special fact that I had to dig deep to see. Furthermore, he was prone to being vulnerable to a solid left hook from high-level opponents, such as evident by when Joe Frazier, Henry Cooper, and Sonny Banks all dropped him with one. And this is a formula for disaster for Ali against Tyson because Tyson's top two punches included the left hook. He fucking leveled many opponents in his prime with the left hook. So if Ali fought the way he did, the athleticism and explosiveness of Tyson would overwhelm Ali. And while Ali would probably move more gracefully in the ring, Tyson would use his style. And I'm going to explain his style now. So, where is it? Tyson had a fight inside kind of style in which he would use a peekaboo kind of defense with his very quick hips and head movement, and I would argue is a much better fighter than Cus D'Amato has ever trained in his life. Better than Floyd Patterson, all those guys. He's the best. There's no question about that. His explosiveness and ridiculous power would be very dangerous for Ali, even to the body, which again, like I said, he was prone to leaving open. While Ali would move more gracefully, like I said, Tyson would simply walk Muhammad Ali down and effectively use his quick change of angles to throw Ali off and incorporate body shots into his game plan to negate the possible use of head movement by Ali. I think Cus D'Amato, if he was there, now, when I'm in same prime, I think Cus D'Amato would be there. He would tell him, Floyd Patterson lost to Ali. You better fucking hit this guy in the body, man. Floyd lost. You're better than Floyd. Do what you have to do. Cus D'Amato would give him the antidote, the kryptonite to Ali. I guarantee you it would work. With Tyson in his prime, it would work. So, where was I? In a nutshell, Mike Tyson would show Ali a ferociousness and amount of power that he's never seen before. And even in the pre-fight, now this is another aspect I decided to incorporate. In the pre-fight, Ali's poetic shit-talking wouldn't even faze Tyson. Tyson would say some fucked up shit. He'd probably talk about his kids, about his fucking wife, whatever, his religion. He doesn't give a fuck. He's literally Conor McGregor on steroids when it comes to shit-talking when he's that aggressive. So he would be ruthless. It might even get to Ali's head, honestly. He might. I mean, that's debatable, but it's very possible. So all this.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Ali never took shit from anyone. I mean, Muhammad Ali was the one that started up the trash talking to begin with. That's what he revolutionized. Why I would mess up my words. Why I would say Muhammad Ali revolutionized the way sports are now is because he was able to use his trash talking ability to get fighters out of his game. And right. I'm sorry to interrupt. But yeah, keep going. Cool. Let me know when you're done so I can get to my points too.
But yeah, while you said Ali, was a pioneer of shit talking, I would argue that Tyson's mindset is a very rare kind of mindset to where, especially during his prime, he was in a place where he didn't give a fuck about anybody or anything except boxing and Cus D'Amato. He literally defended his coach to death. Like, he would kill someone. He literally said it. He would kill someone for Cus D'Amato. All he cared about was boxing, his trainer, himself, and winning belts and killing people. That's literally what he would say. I don't think Ali's classic kind of shit-talking would even faze him. Tyson would be brash, uncensored, unfiltered, and Ali has never faced an opponent that talks shit to that extent. Not even Joe Frazier. He's gone in a lot of people's heads. He's gone in Joe Frazier's head. He's gone in, I believe George Foreman's head. I guarantee you, Cus D'Amato and Tyson together, that shit wouldn't faze him. Again, that's debatable, though, but that's just another aspect I wanted to touch up on. So all this incorporated into each other, the left hook vulnerability, the fact that he leaves his body open too often, the fact that Tyson's probably more explosive and more powerful than anyone he's ever faced. Maybe not George Foreman, but he's still faster than George Foreman. I would say his power is relative to George Foreman. His speed is superior to George Foreman. And his style would be a huge detriment to Ali's style and would be the reason why prime Mike Tyson would beat prime Muhammad Ali. So that's my argument right now, if you want to counter.
If I may I use the power like you were talking about? The competition in this? All right, I'm going to go ahead and use power. Like you said, Jim, there isn't really a comparison of power here. Ali was not that much of a puncher like Tyson was. Tyson would kill you early. He had plenty of first-round knockouts in his career that I can agree with Mike Tyson. But like you said, I don't think anybody here, I know Jim, you're the boxing history, I don't think you can remember a fight where Ali won in the first round.
Right, yeah.
He never really won a fight in the first round. I don't think there has been a more explosive puncher in boxing, certainly, than Mike Tyson, for sure. One of the most greatest power punchers that ever lived in the sport of boxing. But there's a problem with the argument, and the problem is Ali's chin. Ali, his overall career, go back up to my stats here, just make sure I'm correct. He had 56 wins and 5 losses in his entire career, and he's only been knocked down 4 times in his whole career. He took on the biggest punchers, like you said, in George Foreman, who has the similarity and power of Tyson. Maybe Tyson had a little bit more power to him, but equally, back then, George Foreman was the Mike Tyson of Ali's era, because how much of a power puncher he really was. And he used the rope-a-dope style. Muhammad Ali used the rope-a-dope style on George Foreman. And honestly, a little bit off topic. I think that's probably what ended up getting him Parkinson's disease and costing him his life.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Muhammad Ali. I think the way he fought Muhammad Ali's style was ended up leading to his death. God rest his soul. But he also took on Ernie Shavers, Sonny Liston, and none of them managed to knock Ali down, let alone knock him out or beat him. So why would we think anyone like Tyson would be able to knock out Ali? This leads me to my next point: mental strength. Like you discussed earlier, it's debatable whether Tyson or not would able to handle uh, Ali's trash talking. But like you said earlier in your argument, back then not Muhammad Ali, excuse me, that Mike Tyson was a ticking time bomb. Now Tyson was vicious, no doubt, no mistake about it. He was one man you would hate to get in a fight with, both inside or outside of the ring, because those hands, he got some power to him. But Muhammad Ali would often beat his opponents before, like he often beat. Sorry, hold on. Mixing up my words here. I don't know why, but hold on. Let me just. Mike Tyson often beat his opponents before the fight through sheer intimidation with his stare downs. But if he couldn't bully you, he would struggle to impose his will. Especially if the fight were on and went into later rounds, where I think Muhammad Ali would graciously be in favor of winning those fights. Because, like I said earlier in my point, back then boxing was like, what, 15 to 20 rounds if it was a championship fight, right, Jimmy?
Yeah.
15, 20 rounds.
It's like 15, yeah.
So we wouldn't know if Mike Tyson could last that long because Muhammad Ali's striking defense was so good that we wouldn't know if Mike Tyson would be able to touch him in the ring. He can get a few shots into the body, like you said, because he kept his body open, and he is a hard puncher. But Muhammad Ali, I'm sure you wouldn't be able to let Tyson touch him because he knows how much of a striker and how powerful his punches are. So we wouldn't even know if Tyson could lay a powerful hand on him. And Ali, on the other hand, was first to really employ psychological tactics against his opposition. Sonny Liston was the most feared man in boxing before Muhammad Ali came along, with links to the mafia and multiple stints in prison. Yet Ali stood firm and embarrassed him, knocked him out to become the heavyweight champion of the world. And another one, Joe Frazier. He was so upset with Ali's jibes that he didn't really forgive Ali. He never forgave Ali after those fights. The use of Ali's tactics outside the ring in the lead up to the fight goes on and on. No boxer could outsmart Ali, if we're being real here. Tyson was a loose cannon at best of times. If he had to put up with Ali's taunts, he would go into the fight wanting to kill Ali and throw his plan out the window, which would fall right into Ali's hands. And like I said, I'm gonna go into Muhammad Ali's style again. Muhammad Ali had the foot and hand speed that had never been seen in the heavyweight division before. He's a big dude, but he had one of the fastest hands back then in boxing. He used every bit of his agility in the ring. If you let him roam the ring, Ali would land one or two punches before he quickly retreated, leaving his opponent with no time to respond. By the time Ali's hits registered, the other boxer would be swinging it that thin air. And there's video evidence to prove that. That when Ali hit you with a 1-2 real quick, then go back into the corner or wherever he was, and the fighter wouldn't be able to know what to do to strike because he would miss. Also, Ali never left his head out to dry. At his best, Ali would draw his opponents in and let them take shots freely, like we talked about the rope-a-dope style. However, the problem was the other boxer couldn't keep up with Ali's ever-shifting head. So if he would leave his body open, but it would be hard to knock out Ali because he always kept his head protected. So however, the problem was the boxer couldn't keep up with him. With his level of fitness, he would wear opponents down and catch them in the later rounds after they were too exhausted to continue fighting. This is why I think Ali would win the fight if it went on to later rounds, is because Mike Tyson's power, his fighting style, in my opinion, wasn't meant to go 12 rounds back then in boxing. It was mostly meant to knock you out in 3 rounds or 1 round, 2 rounds, maybe up to 5 rounds. But he also, not Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, he also had a signature right hand lead that took advantage of his hand speed. For a normal boxer, the right hand lead needs to be employed sparingly because it leaves them open to big shots. Ali was so fast where his right lead would be a constant weapon that set up damaging combinations on opponents. There is a reason why a lot of people now, even to this day, Muhammad Ali is unanimously almost considered the greatest boxer ever. No one could keep up with him with his speed, the way he boxes, and he always had a perfect strategy to use against you. So that's why I think if this fight with Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson in their prime, if it went on to the later rounds, I don't think Mike Tyson will last that long because his power will make him tired, and Muhammad Ali will be able to strike him so much that the fight would probably end in the in a TKO or probably unanimous decision if it ever went to that.
All right.
And
So, oh yeah.
before I go,
All right, go ahead.
before
Yeah.
I let you go, I just want to bring up a video. I think we've all seen this video here. If not, I'll bring up the video in a little bit if you need me to as a source. But it was the interview with, I think it was on Arsenio Hall show with Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson.
All right.
And Muhammad Ali was talking about Mike Tyson. He said, "I was a dance master. I wasn't that powerful." And he even admits that he wasn't that powerful, but he was fast. But if Mike Tyson hit him, he would be knocked out. But there's something gesturing that he would have been knocked out by Tyson. That's if he would catch me. And Muhammad Ali, he's a cocky son of a bitch. We all know that. Me and you, Jimmy, we can agree on that.
Yeah.
He was a cocky son of a bitch, and so can Tyson be at times. When he was on the, what would you say, a power trip? Yeah, I would say a power trip. But even Mike Tyson, who says he knows he's great, but he needs to tell you, like he said, but in his quote, but I can tell you, but can I tell you something? In this situation, every head must bow, every tongue must confess that Muhammad Ali is the greatest of all time. And yeah, even Mike Tyson admits that Muhammad Ali, who is a big inspiration in Mike Tyson's boxing career, hell, he even knocked out a fighter for Muhammad Ali. Remember that back in the day. But yeah, that's why I think Muhammad Ali would beat Mike Tyson if it went into the later rounds in this fight.
Okay. So I guess I'll start out by countering that. Mike Tyson obviously is going to say, out of a sign of respect, he's going to say, yeah, Muhammad Ali would beat me. But
obviously,
yeah. So I would say it's not a very legitimate source to reference when deciding who's the best of all time. That's like,
I know. I just wanted to put that in there because I thought it was cool.
That's like Canelo saying Chavez is the best Mexican fighter of all time, but in his head he has every intention to become the best, or thinks he is the best Mexican fighter of all time. So that's kind of not the best reference, like I said. But speaking on the fighters, the hard-hitting fighters that you listed, Frazier, Liston, Foreman, Shavers, I would argue again, Mike Tyson was the next stage of boxing mechanics evolution. There was something about him that was unhuman-like as far as his mechanics and his bodily ability to box. I mean, Foreman hit hard, but he was slow, and Ali did what he had to do. And Frazier, all those guys. But I would argue Tyson is better than all those guys. Now, there's a difference between who's the GOAT and who's more talented. Ali is, in my opinion, above Tyson as far as all time. Doesn't mean he's a better fighter than Tyson. Tyson is considered the most talented boxer of all time among many. Him, Roy Jones Jr., maybe a couple others, maybe Floyd Mayweather. Boxing gurus such as Teddy.
I would definitely put Floyd on that list.
Yeah. So people like Teddy Atlas say, Tyson is to him, Tyson is the most talented boxer he's ever seen, indicating that boxer at his best can beat any man on the planet. Again, the trash talking when it comes to that, Tyson in his prime was somewhat of a primitive kind of animal, to the point where nothing fazed him. He was just more animalistic, and I honestly don't think Ali shit talking would matter in the slightest. He might retaliate and talk shit, but it's not. I honestly don't think it's due to the fact of anything getting in his head. At that point, I don't think anything got in his head. I think the only thing that matters was knocking everyone the fuck out. I think Customato instilled that in him at a young age. So the shit talking would not get to him the way it did to Frazier, the way it did to Liston, the way it did to Foreman. I think he was a completely different animal due to the unfortunate circumstances that he had as a child, and due to him being fed, and basically was shoved down his throat. Boxing was shoved down his throat to the point where he had no life. He was basically an antisocial animal. That's what he was. It's really what he was. So the trash talking aspect probably wouldn't get to him. I think Ali's, if he were to face him, he would be looking at someone, he's a type of person he's never seen in his life before. I think Ali would be kind of shaken, at least if Tyson already had a legacy at that point. Let's say they fight 2 years into Tyson's career and Ali's in his prime or whatever. I think he'd look at him and be like, all right, this guy has 15 fights in his first year, 16 wins by first round KO. That's going to be in the back of his head. He's going to be talking shit, and he's going to see Tyson's cold, dead eyes, and he's going to say, oh, fuck, this guy is not, he's not normal. This guy is not normal. He's not Frazier. He's not Liston. Now, that's more narrative, but honestly, I think that's the case as far as the shit talking. I don't think that'd be that big of a deal. But again, as far as technique, Ali relied on his athleticism, and I would argue every opponent that he ever faced was not on Tyson's level as far as athleticism. Now Ali, he had the speed.
As far as striking goes, I hate cutting off, but as striking goes, maybe not. But they did pack a punch in
Yeah,
those fists that they had.
but I would argue Tyson had foreman's power and had speed as far as hit movement, relative or superior, honestly, to Ali. Ali had the footwork. That's where his speed came from. As far as his strikes, he had decent speed. He wasn't the fastest. I would argue Tyson was faster in the inside game. I think in an inside game, if they were fighting inside a phone booth, so to speak, Tyson would definitely have the fucking advantage. He has probably the best the best right uppercut I've ever seen. I think ever. So if they were the inside, which Customato would definitely tell Tyson, hey, get in fucking inside. You do not let this fucker dance in here. He definitely learned from the mistakes of Patterson. He would tell him that. So again, I think Customato plus Tyson in his prime, plus the fact that he's cold-blooded and literally nothing gets to him. He's basically like an animal that's on a leash, and Customato had not in a disrespectful way, but Customato had him on a leash and would let him go when they would fight. I think in the inside, due to his viciousness and ferocious power, Ali would lose. And would he be able to keep Tyson at bay in his prime? That's probably the most iffy part that I have to debate, but he would move around the ring. But honestly, there isn't anything to indicate that Tyson didn't have the stamina to endure all 12 or 15 rounds, due to the fact he never had to. He fucking knocked everybody in the first round.
Oh, you're lagging a little bit. Hold on, dude. I hate to cut you off, but you're starting to cut out a little bit.
Lagging still?
Yeah, not like you were doing fine like a couple minutes ago, but now it's starting to pick up again. But I don't know if it's on my end or.
I don't know.
What about you guys? What about you guys? Can you hear it?
It's kind of lagging. It's lagging a little bit.
You guys hear me now?
So it's not. Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. So I'll go.
What's making you lag so much? Is it the microphone or?
I don't know. I think it's fucking internet.
It might be the internet or the microphone.
It could just be like the internet plus Discord.
Yeah.
All right, continue.
All right,
with
so
your point.
I'll restate what I stated if you guys didn't hear it. So, as far as how it would go inside the ring, as far as styles and technique, Customato is the type of guy that, he crosses his T's and dots his O's. He would have everything from the Patterson fight written down. He'd study everything. He'd instill it in Tyson's brain to the point where it's second nature. And Tyson was a second nature kind of guy. Everything seemed so graceful to him. He had his own gracefulness about him, kind of like Ali did with his footwork. Tyson would just do things effortlessly because it was just programmed inside of his head. So Prime Ali was basically a machine. That's what he was. He was a machine. Nothing else mattered. Obviously, after his prime, he became human. Honestly, he became human. He had demons, and his life went to shit. But in his prime, Ali would have the hardest fight of his fucking career. Harder than Frazier, I'd argue. Harder than Liston. Harder than Foreman. He's basically power and speed combined into one explosive bomb. That's what he was. He was an explosive ticking time bomb. Every time he'd get in, there was an execution. Mm-hmm. And Ali might be able to, to keep him at bay for a little bit of, I think, the overwhelming explosivity and the overwhelming speed and the overwhelming tenacity that Tyson had in his prime would overwhelm Ali. I think that's what would happen in their primes.
Well, like you said, yeah, for sure. Mike Tyson in his prime would be one of the most toughest opponents in Ali's career, for sure. Yeah. Maybe the first 3 rounds would probably be the most dangerous rounds of Ali's career, because you never know, right? In boxing, anything can happen. But if it goes past the 3rd round, 5th round, would Tyson be able to last that long in the ring with Muhammad Ali, who's been known to win the fights later on in the rounds? I'm just saying, would Tyson be able to keep up with him in the later round if it were to go into that stage of the fight?
Right. Well, in his prime, there's nothing to indicate whether he could or couldn't, so we can't really imply either way because he didn't have to.
We can't really imply that, but we never, like you said, we don't know because they never fought each other. But that's just a question.
But
would he be able to last that long?
I'd imply that Customato definitely trained him for 12 rounds. The kind of trainer that he was, the kind of mindset that Tyson had. I think I don't think he'd have any issue going 12 rounds. I think he was literally the closest thing to a machine we've ever seen inside the ring. Like, he was just a living machine. I would argue he'd be just fine. So yeah, I think he would just overwhelm Ali. Now, could Ali win? Maybe, but in an infinite domain of infinite possibilities, the majority of those possibilities, Tyson would most likely win in their prime, due to him being the next step in boxing mechanics evolution, due to him being probably the most physically gifted boxer of all time, due to the fact that shit talking wouldn't even phase him with Customato and his, machine-like mentality to where he was just literally like a program. He would go to point A to point B. That's all Tyson was before he went down Shit's Creek and lost his shit. Ali, he's a very human-like guy. He had his, I feel like in the trenches, honestly, Tyson just wouldn't give a fuck. I think Ali would feel his power. He would feel his body hurting. I think he'd get dropped with the left hook for sure. I think the two best punches of Tyson are kryptonite to Muhammad Ali. He doesn't protect his body. He's not an inside fighter. So that right uppercut would come if they fought in the inside, or the left hook over the top, because he always has his hands down. That was Ali's thing because of his cockiness. I think that would be a detriment to his probability of success in this fight, and I think he'd get caught by the left hook one way or the other. I think Customato would burn that into his head months out, maybe even a couple years before they would fight, if that was the case in some alternate reality. So I think Muhammad Ali would be fighting an uphill battle, in my opinion, against prime Mike Tyson, who was just honestly the most talented boxer of all time, probably. Maybe Roy Jones Jr. was better, but only like him, Floyd, those are like the most talented of all time. I think in his prime, he would most likely defeat Muhammad Ali, but that's my argument on that.
I mean, for me, one of the things that stand out is that Muhammad Ali, throughout his entire career, he's only been knocked down 4 times in his whole career, and to me, it's hard for me to argue against that because he's got 56 wins.
Right.
He's got 56 wins, and he's only been knocked down 4 times in his career. To me, that says a lot about Muhammad Ali as a fighter. Yeah, he's never really faced a fighter like Mike Tyson, but I feel like if the fight, like I said plenty of times, I feel like Muhammad Ali would win this fight by decision, maybe by unanimous decision, because I feel like Mike Tyson would tire out later on in the rounds, because I feel like he would use all his power to finish Tyson in the early rounds to prove a point that he is the better boxer than Muhammad Ali. I feel like Tyson would he would try to finish him early, use all his power in the first 3 to 5 rounds, and then he would tire out, and then Muhammad Ali would just pick him apart down the later rounds. Because with his speed and the way he fights, I feel like Ali has the chance going into the later rounds. It'd be a huge chance. But for me, to end my point, he only got knocked down 4 times in his career. So I feel like it's hard for me to argue against that. I don't think Ali wins by the unanimous decision.
All right. You want to go to closing statements or conclusions then? Oh, unless you have anything else.
I'll go with my conclusion first.
Okay, you can go first. Yeah.
In the end, both of these fighters are definitely in the conversation for the greatest boxer of all time. Both of them changed the way how boxing is and what boxing is meant to be. Muhammad Ali revolutionized how shit talking was, how shit talking is to this day. There wouldn't be no shit talking in sports without Muhammad Ali. That's for a fact. And there would be not that many powerful strikers like a Conor McGregor, like Canelo. There wouldn't be guys and Triple G. There wouldn't be no powerful strikers without Mike Tyson. So both of these guys definitely changed the way boxing is today. And hopefully we get to play a boxing video game somewhere to show that who would win the fight, Tyson or Ali. So that's my closing argument. But both of these guys, for sure, are definitely the greatest.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so my closing statement. First off, I want to start off by saying, again, guys, this is about them in their primes, who would win, point blank period. Not about their accomplishments, not about the legacy that they instilled on the world of combat sports as we know it, because obviously Ali wins by a mile. It's not even fucking close. But as far as who wins in a fight, Ali has some glaring holes in his arsenal that cost him a couple fights, such as against Ken Norton, such as against Joe Frazier the first time. And he had a vulnerability to left hooks because he had his hands down. And he had a vulnerability to get hit in the body because he was a cocky person. And again, he was extremely athletic for his time. So those
he had a right to be cocky too.
Yeah, he was the best. Yeah, he was the best of his era. But going to Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson was a specimen that not only had the physical capabilities and the physical gifts that we've never seen before ever, but he had a mentality that was second to none during his prime. So let me get that straight. Not later on, because he was a complete fool. He lost his shit by mid-30s. But
he really did.
Yeah, he did. And that's probably why he lost to Holyfield and Lewis. But that's not the discussion here. But in his beginnings, He was a specimen physically and mentally. Nothing would faze him. He would literally look through his opponent's souls, and I feel like they were already done before they got on there. Now, granted, Ali was tough mentally, but he's never seen anything the likes of Mike Tyson. So as far as the mental warfare, it wouldn't go very well for Ali, in my opinion. I think the shit-talking would barely phase, if at all phase, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's shit-talking was so brutal, so to the point, so uncensored. I think Ali probably wouldn't show it on his face, like, to the public, but deep down, it'd be like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is he? Like, that's literally what would probably go through his mind. Because he's a classy kind of guy. He's a poetic kind of man. He's a great shit-talker. But Tyson was uncensored, unhinged. He was a fucking monster. Kind of, I can compare him to, like, McGregor versus Khabib, except obviously Khabib won that fight, and he was a better fighter. Yeah. He's a better fighter. But, or Mayorga. Like, Mayorga said some shit to... No, these are bad examples because these examples I'm listing, they lost their fights. But Mayorga talked shit to De La Hoya. He's like, fuck, I fucked your wife and shit like that. Obviously, he lost the fight. But the point is, Tyson he's that, but with the ability. So he's Mayorga with the ability to knock you the fuck out. Yeah. So him in his first 2 to 3 years, knocked 16 fucking people out in the first round. Did go to, I think, round 6 once, so he does have the ability to last. There's nothing to indicate whether or not or whether he could go into 12 rounds, but I think due to his ridiculous work ethic and machine-like program mentality, I think Customato has him ready for fucking 12, 15 rounds easily. And I think he would overwhelm Muhammad Ali in the ring with his peekaboo style. I think that jab, it would be hard for Ali to land a jab, because I know he would be keeping him at bay to avoid that right uppercut and that left hook, which is his two most best punches. So he'd be throwing that jab around, and Tyson would be peekabooing and slowly leading his way into the inside until they're in the inside game. Maybe he has him against the ropes. Maybe he has him against the corner. At that point, he's fucked. I think Ali would have a hard time hitting Tyson due to the fact that every strike that Tyson had in his early 20s was lights out. Ali has never faced that. The closest thing he did was Foreman, and Foreman was a much slower puncher. He was hard as fuck, but he was slow, which is the reason why Ali capitalized and TKO'd him. That's why he's the GOAT of heavyweights. But again, that has to do with legacy, not who would win the fucking fight. So I think
if we went on who had the better legacy, then obviously
it would even be a debate. Yeah, but
I feel like to counter that. I know where your conclusion, but to counter that, I feel like you said, overwhelm him, but I feel like Tyson wouldn't be able to land shots to the head because Ali would protect his head too much. Maybe to the body, but he would try to finish him with a knockout into the face. I feel like that would be hard for but for Tyson to finish him. Because Ali did use that rope-a-dope style to his advantage, and his head movement is one of the best of all time. It's hard to hit Ali in the face to try to finish him.
Yeah, I would argue that, though, that Tyson's more explosive, and I think he's quicker to contact than Ali. So he would use that peekaboo style, come inside, and beat Ali to the punch. I think his athleticism would fail him, to be quite honest, because Tyson was a more explosive, quicker, harder puncher. That's just the reality. Ali was probably, I don't know if he was more in their primes. Technique doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter, but as far as they have different styles, so I can't really compare who has better technique and better styles. But he would beat him to the punch.
If you want to compare styles, we would actually see them in person to compare that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or actually see them fight.
They're different. Each other, they're different fighters. But overall, to sum it up in a nutshell, Tyson has a no shit taking mentality. The shit talking would not work. He has the two best punches that would be kryptonite to Muhammad Ali. And there's nothing to indicate whether he could or couldn't go into the 12th round. I'd argue that he could due to Customato's almost borderline hell-like conditions that he would train Tyson in, making him a fucking killer. And overall, I think he would overwhelm Muhammad Ali and probably take him out, I would say in the mid-rounds if I had to be specific. But yeah, that's why I think prime Mike Tyson would defeat prime Muhammad Ali. So yeah, that's my closing statement. I don't know if you judges want to debate judges.
No, I already got everything I need to say out of the way, but this was, I just want to say this was fun.
Yeah, this is a good debate.
Yeah, it was a great debate. So I had an honor for me to fucking debate why Muhammad Ali would win.
Yeah, it's an honor to debate. Yeah, both of these dudes.
Yeah.
All right, you guys want to...
Yeah, I'm done. Judges,
me too.
Go ahead, make your decision, see who won this debate.
Yeah, you guys got it.
One second.
You expect us to pick? That was a fucking good debate, bro. What the fuck? like, holy shit. I could literally go 50-50 between you guys. But
Oh god,
I
that's
guess
not
it's
what we want.
to the judge's person. What is
If you
that?
guys need to
Yeah?
discuss it, if you guys need to
Yeah,
discuss it, we
well,
want to
I think
do
it'll
it.
be better if we talk about it.
One of the I'm a Pacquiao fan, but that was one of the best knockouts I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was horrible.
To a split decision. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I swear to God.
Oh,
I swear to God.
No.
All right, we need a part 2 on this, honestly. No.
Yeah, I feel like we need a part 2 because
Just kidding.
maybe a trilogy if you have to.
Fucking
But
pick a
no.
decision.
All right, go ahead.
All right, you go first.
I'll go first. Okay, honestly, Ali, yes. Okay, Ali has a lot of good defense. He's also got the reach advantage a little bit. Also, too, like the power and the mental state of Ali, it had a little bit over. However, Mike was killing people in his prime, bro. Like you cannot like Mike had like that edge, like in his when he was with Customato. Customato was like the guy that basically taught Mike, how to perfect it. And keep in mind too, like if you follow Mike's workout regimen, like in his prime, this dude was just straight up fighting like people to knock him out through from rounds 1 to 5. Ali kind of, he did keep the fight going for a little bit longer. Mike's power was getting at the prime of like what was it 19? I don't know when he really took up boxing. Like when he started getting to the professionals.
I think it
Like
was 12.
Yeah, he
so
was a
like
little kid.
So yeah, when he went to Customato, like that fucking power like increased tenfolds. Like Ali, he was like his defense. I personally think it was kind of like there was kind of like a way where people could just get underneath hit him. I mean, it looked good on video, but like if you actually see it, like not a lot of people do that defense except
The
for,
left hook. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Is it? No, the rope-a-dope, the defense. Who the fuck does it? Someone does recently, but anyway.
Tyson Fury.
Yeah, he does. Like it just looks like you can get hit easily. I'm just saying, that could be me. But anyway, yeah, I just mentally, like mentally, I think Ali, his mental state was kind of like there, like he could actually keep going, and he was really talked. Surprised, like this is like that part was gonna. Yes, Mike didn't have his mental state as well. His mental state was all over the place. He was fucking really like a fuck up kid, but that played a crucial part in boxing because he used that to basically win fights. Like that's where he was killing people. Overall though, I guess I'm kind of skewing on a little bit. I have to give this to Mike because I think Mike is honestly he was the better boxer. Yes, I know. Mike was the better boxer, and he had the power, and he just like he perfected his craft as he grew older. The later years, he started like fading away. Ali, yes, it got better. His defense and offense did get better, but then when he got his license revoked because of the Vietnam War and all that stuff, like I felt that's when he was kind of slowing down, and then the Parkinson's took over, and then he lost his belt to Larry Holmes. And again, these are prime, just bringing it up, but like honestly, I have to go with Mike Tyson on that one. So yeah.
All right.
All right. Fuck.
Yeah.
Okay, holy shit. This is very fucking close. And honestly, I really do feel like I can go either or. But like, and yeah, you guys made some very valid points. I do believe that the fight, like how the fight would happen, if it started, even in the interview that John was talking about, like what Muhammad said, like, he'd probably be like quick for him and be able to move all over the place. But once Mike hits him, there's gonna be some trouble. And you could argue the fact that Muhammad Ali could probably drag on the fight to later rounds. But that doesn't mean it's gonna get worse for Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson has a way of getting frustrated, being more aggressive in later rounds. Wait, am I lagging?
Nah.
That's me. Sorry, it's my table.
But like, yeah, I do think this is a very close battle. But like, Jimmy has a very, very solid point when it comes to the newer generations. The technology when it comes to boxing was different than how it was before. Mike Tyson learned from Muhammad. And like, there's just basically a lot to it. I don't want to keep dragging this on too much, so I'm just gonna give you my point. I'm very, very, very like, I can't even decide, but I'm gonna go with Mike on this one only because, Mike, like, okay, look, like I was saying, Muhammad would be able to move around, and maybe, just maybe, if he able to drag the fight long enough, to the end, maybe he would win by split decision. That's still a big if, because Mike Tyson could throw punches all fucking day. His strikes are hard as fuck, and like and we're talking about their primes too. So we can't talk about what happened before. I mean, after or before, because they're very. I don't know. Mike Tyson was just a fucking murderer, bro. He should be in prison just because how many people he killed in boxing. But anyways,
He did go to jail, but it was for
Yeah.
I know he did, but it wasn't for boxing, was he? Well, actually, well, I don't know. Did he go to jail for biting someone's ear off?
No, he didn't go to jail.
Nah, it was
For-
He went to jail for rape.
Allegedly,
yeah,
allegedly.
Yeah,
You don't know if
I
it's-
do think Mike would tiny bit, like a very tiny bit, would get in Muhammad's head, but because how his mental state was, I don't think it would really do any damage to Muhammad. I think he would still stay, very focused. But I don't think that's gonna really help him when it comes to him getting punched in the face. And just Mike was just deadly. And honestly, I'm gonna go with Mike because he just by an inch, by a pubic hair, I'm gonna go with Mike because it's very close. But yeah, when it comes to raw power and quickness and whatnot, I feel like Mike could take more of the punches than Muhammad could throw at him, and Mike could do some real damage if he punched Muhammad. So yeah, so basically, go for Jimmy on this one. Sorry, John.
Sorry.
All
Honestly,
right.
John, I'm not gonna lie, John. Honestly, bro, I almost went for you, bro. Like, it was so fucking close.
It's all a matter of opinion.
Yeah, this is just
went all
based
out
on our
on this.
opinion. You know, we can let the fans fucking decide.
Yeah, let us know who you thought won. But yeah,
But-
folks, that
I
was
feel like this is a very like close 50-50 or fucking
Yeah.
49-51 type decision. But yeah, this is very, very close.
all right, folks. We hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let us know who you thought won. Let us know more topics in the comments, and we'll catch you next debate, folks. Peace out.
Yeah.